Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. And to my left is the Radnor Township Solicitor, John Rice, who will take it from here.
Thank you. Most of you were here when we opened the hearing a month or so ago, and this is type of a hearing that's different than your normal land development application or subdivision application. This is a zoning hearing. The board acts like a quasi-judicial hearing board. So we're going to have sworn testimony and evidence by the applicant in support of the application. When we opened the hearing previously, I have 17 resident parties, and I just want to make sure who's here and who's not here tonight, who signed up when we initially opened up. So I'm going to go through this list, and if you're here, just raise your hand and let me know you're here. And I know there's at least one other person here tonight that wants to join the list. So if there's anybody else that wants to become a party, let me go through the list and see who's here, and then we'll add anybody that wants to be added. Once I'm done with that, Mr. Falcone, who's representing the applicant, he can ask questions of anybody that wants to become a party. You have to live within some proximity to the site. You can't live in a different township. You can't live in some other county. You have to be within some distance. There's no hard and fast rule, but if you're a mile away, that's not good enough. I can tell you that. So let me just go through the people that signed up at the last hearing. Angus, Ronald, and forgive me if I get this wrong, McGillivray. Present. Thank you. Ryan Breyer. Here. Brian White. Here. Henry Schramm. Jeff Pearsall. Sandy Bauer. Carol Burns. Brooke Hunt. Eileen Stoveld. John McGrath. Elizabeth Maratea. John Aiken. Aye. Leonardo Solis. Chris Massaro. Here. Nicholas Alicio. Robert Gilmore. Here. Lisa DeLizia. Here. Robert Gilmore's here. Lisa? Here. Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to become a party? If so, I'm going to need you to come up to the podium, state your name and your address, and then I'll ask you to give your contact info to Peggy Hagan.
Good evening. Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road. I'm about a block and a half, 2 blocks away. Wayne, Pennsylvania. Ward 11.
Good evening. I'm Dan Prima, Prima, at 122 South Bellevue.
Kathleen Wright, W-R-I-G-H-T, Lenore Avenue, about 1,500 feet from the property.
Hi, I'm Mike Balisaris. B-A-L-I-T-S-A-R-I-S, and I'm at 315 West Avenue. Thanks.
And once you've announced your name, please go over to Peggy Hagan and add your contact information.
Eileen Ware, owner of 201 West Lancaster Avenue.
And how do you spell
Ware? Ware, W-A-R-E.
Thank you.
Diane Klassen, 201 West Lancaster. C-L-A-S-S-E-N. E-N.
I'm sorry, what's your address again? Sorry.
I'm sorry, ma'am, Ms. Klassen, can you repeat your address?
201. That's what I thought.
Sorry.
You got it?
wasn't
201 West Lancaster.
Thank you.
Michael Lahota, Lihota, 7 Doyle Road, Wayne.
I just have a question. Can a business owner do this if it's in proximity, or you have to live in the
Yeah,
township?
yes.
Oh, Chris
If
Todd.
you own the business and
Yes.
nearby, right?
Yes.
Business owners,
Okay.
of course, yep.
Yeah. Christopher Todd, 108 North Wayne Avenue. TODD.
Good evening. Reed Taylor, 439 Luella Avenue, Wayne. Luella Avenue, Wayne, NWBA.
Hi,
Again, once you announce your name, please go and give your contact information to Peggy Hagan.
Deanna Doan, Doane. My business is at 175 Stratford Avenue.
Scott Gensler, Gensler, 163 East Lancaster Avenue.
So before we get started with taking the testimony, I'm going to just go over again how this will work, so we're clear. Those people that are signing up as parties, you have the right to cross-examine every witness that the applicant calls. You don't have to, but you have the right to do that. You have the right to call your own witnesses, for or against the application. You can testify yourself for or against the application. But we're dealing with factual testimony regarding the project, regarding its impacts, regarding compliance with zoning, et cetera. So we have over 20 parties. So I'm saying this because don't feel compelled to get up and ask or just talk unless you have something you want to ask the witness. You might have something you want to ask the next witness because there'll be at least 4 witnesses. And we're not going to finish this tonight, I can tell you that right now. There'll be a traffic engineer, a civil engineer, a planner, probably the owner, the applicant. So we're going to just go through them one by one. And Mr. Falcone will call each of the witnesses who is going to sit here where the mic is. And if anyone has questions of the witnesses, you're going to need to come up and get to the podium and then ask the witness your questions, because you can't ask them from the back of the room. You got to come up and please speak into that microphone so that the court reporter who's taking this all down can hear the question and the answer. And we'll do that. We'll just proceed. We'll see how far we get tonight. My guess is we probably have at least a couple hours.
Have we agreed on an end time?
No.
Should we do that? Yeah.
Um,
Can we get the parties to agree to end by
What time?
10 o'clock?
I would say 9:30.
9:30?
Yeah.
Are commissioners okay with that? 9:30 end time tonight?
Whatever works for you, it's fine.
Okay.
Is that reasonable?
Whatever
Okay.
works for you
Are
guys.
the parties okay?
Whatever works for you.
I
guys.
should be mic'd. I'm trying to get agreement among the parties that we
Whatever
will
works
end
for the
tonight
board.
at 9:30.
Whatever works for the board.
Okay. Knowing that we're probably doing a couple of nights of this? Excellent. Okay, 9:30, y'all.
Okay.
I want to explain who you are versus the board in this setup. Can you tell us who you are?
Yeah.
And who the board is?
Okay.
In these hearings?
Question. Yes, could you repeat who each of the witnesses or from the party, what their credentials are?
So I'm hearing the question, will you, you're asking for the witness list?
Well,
So-
I just want to know, so I direct my question to the proper person. I don't want to come up thinking that the first person wants to.
Yeah, I think everybody will be very clearly introduced.
And I will, Commissioner, I will, in my opening statement, identify each of the witnesses and their area of testimony.
Okay, and just to reiterate, the Board of Commissioners in a conditional use hearing sits as a hearing board. They have to make a written decision, once all the testimony's in, as to whether or not the application complies with the zoning ordinance. This is a mixed-use type of development of condominiums and some retail on the bottom floor. As the township solicitor, that's me, I sit with the Board of Commissioners. This board has to be impartial in terms of hearing all the testimony and evidence. I have to be impartial in terms of advising them, and at the end of the day, the board makes a decision one way or the other and has to issue a written decision. This is all spelled out in the municipality's planning code. This is not something that just, came up. This has been going on since 1969, believe it or not, the state planning code. Much like a zoning hearing board. So that's the board's function. I'd ask all the parties not to contact any of the board members, send them emails,
Right. Clearly about this.
Yeah, about this
You can contact us on other issues.
Yeah, if there's something else, but about this, there can't be any ex parte communications between parties, the applicant, any of the applicant's witnesses, and the board until the hearing's over and the decision gets rendered. Any questions?
Are you making the decision tonight?
No. No, there'll be no decision until all the witnesses, I'm sure Mr. Falcone has at least 4 witnesses, and the board is going to go till 9:30 tonight, and then at the end of that, we'll pick another date. Probably looking at January, I would guess, for the next date, depending on availability. Yes, sir.
Will there be opportunity for public comment tonight, or will it be after all the testimony?
After all the testimony's in, there'll be one public comment after all the testimony's in, and before there's any kind of decision. Because there's some residents here that aren't parties, but they want to comment. So, it's an opportunity for those residents to provide public comment before a decision gets made.
So there is public comment tonight.
No public comment tonight.
At the end of the hearing.
Right. After all the testimony's done. All the testimony. Yes, sir.
The witnesses and the testimony, are the witnesses part of the building project? What are they witnesses to? You say there's 4 witnesses.
Well,
So I'm going to ask everybody, our council has the opportunity to do an opening statement. He's going to lay it all out to you about who he's calling, why he's calling, their expertise, and I think it'll become much more clear once the hearing begins. You will know who the witnesses are. They're going to be his experts, the traffic expert, his developer, those types of experts that he's bringing forward. And your witnesses are who you choose them to be.
And who is giving the testimony? Is that us residents, or is that people from
the applicant. The applicant has the burden of proof to call witnesses and to show that his application meets the requirements of the township zoning ordinance. So he's going to call his witnesses One will address the engineering on the plan, one will address traffic impacts. There'll probably be a planner that will address how many trees are going to be planted. There might be a planner that addresses school-aged children. How many school-aged children can you expect out of this? So it's that kind of testimony you're going to hear.
Is there a listing of the requirements that are required by the township?
In the zoning ordinance, yes. I'd urge you all to get online and go to the township code and the zoning ordinance and take a look at that. Okay, with that, Mr. Falcone, do you have some opening statement?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Rice, but I felt a lot better about it before, you know.
Okay. No, not for the conditional use hearing.
Agenda says if we say the Pledge of Allegiance first.
I don't have an agenda. Okay, join me for the Pledge of
All right.
Allegiance.
Liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Keeping us honest. Okay, I'm gonna, one final call for just pre-hearing questions. Questions about how it's gonna run and what your role is and what their role is. If we're done with those, I will hand it over. We good? Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, I'll do my best here to lay out a fair summary of what we're going to try and accomplish. If I miss anything, for sure, we'll get to it in testimony. But my name is David Falcone. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which is West Avenue GP. They are the equitable owner of the property, which is the subject of this application, 60 West Avenue. The property is owned by AT&T Corp. So as an equitable owner, we have an interest in the property, which is evidenced by an agreement of sale. And we are able to appear tonight on behalf, essentially, of our interest in that property. The subject property, again, 60 West, is located in the township's WBOD zoning district. Despite its terminology, it's not necessarily an overlay insofar as there's no underlying district which will control this project. But what is important to understand for tonight's application with respect to this specific property is that 3 properties in the township have been identified as special use areas. Those properties are identified in section 28053.17 of the zoning ordinance. Why is that important? So these properties have been identified by the township for very specific development within the WBOD. And this is one of those properties. The exact identification is the Bellevue Park and Walk, or the AT&T parking lot. These areas are controlled by a subset of the existing zoning ordinance. So when you're flipping through the zoning ordinance, you have to evaluate this property as well as the 2 others that have been identified for specific development when an application like this is being submitted. The special use areas identify certain, as they define them, permitted uses. And 2 of those uses are multiple family dwelling units and retail stores and personal service shops. In each instance, these developments must come before the Board of Commissioners and seek conditional use approval. So what's conditional use approval, and why is that important for what we're seeking tonight? So a conditional use approval, much like a special exception, is very much akin to a by right use. It's not a zoning application where we're seeking a deviation from the township's zoning code. Instead, it is a use that has been identified by the township. A special exception goes in front of your zoning hearing board. A conditional use comes in front of the Board of Commissioners. And what the MPC, as Solicitor Rice had previously mentioned, as well as existing case law says about conditional uses and special exceptions, are that when an applicant meets the criteria that are set forth in the ordinance for that use, the applicant is essentially then entitled to that use, provided they establish their prima facie case of hitting those criteria. So what we're going to do tonight is walk through the criteria in the ordinance as far as the use goes. But this is just a threshold step. It's just a use application before the board. part of what we will have to do, assuming we move forward tonight, is come back as part of a subdivision application and a land development application. And during that process, your township's subdivision and land development ordinance will kick in, and the criteria that are set forth in that ordinance will then control the very specifics of the development. Things like stormwater, things like sewage capacity, water, all of that falls within the saldo and that criteria. And that's all, again, set forth in kind of very well-established case law. So our activity tonight is very focused. It's focused on the use itself and whether or not this use will create a detrimental impact, an unusually burdensome load on the township, on its services. But part of what goes to that is the fact that this use, this multifamily use, this personal service shop use, has been identified by the township in its comprehensive plan and its zoning ordinance as being specifically appropriate, not just for a zoning district, but for this very specific property. And so when the applicant obtained its equitable interest in this property, it evaluated the ordinance. And oftentimes, this board is aware, and the public as well, that when applicants come before a board, this board, most boards, there is some catch to their development, some inconsistency with the zoning code, which will ultimately drive them back seeking variances, seeking deviations from what the township has established for development within that district. You'll hear tonight, this applicant is not doing that. You will hear that we are not intending to seek any zoning relief as part of this development. The intent by this applicant, as it has in the past, was to come forward with an application that was compliant with your zoning code, and that what we believe meets the criteria with respect to special exceptions and conditional uses. I have with me tonight 4 witnesses that we will put on, and we've also marked a number of exhibits. You'll hear from our civil engineer, Rob Lambert. He will offer testimony generally about the project, and we will definitely drift into some land development type testimony. He will offer testimony about things that will certainly come up later and maybe don't necessarily fall within the criteria of what we're here for tonight, but I know full well there's a lot of folks here that want to hear some of that stuff, and so we will get into it. But rest assured, we will be back as part of our application. We also have with us tonight our architect, Stephen Varenhorst. And while, again, the floor plans and these elevations aren't necessarily a part of what we're seeking tonight, people want to know, and we want to try and give them as much information as we can, and that includes you all. We also have with us tonight our traffic engineer, Christopher Williams. He's going to offer testimony on the traffic impact of this proposed development and whether we believe there will be a meaningful impact as part of what we're proposing here that would deviate from what would be a normal development on this site pursuant to your code without the conditional use. And finally, we're going to have one witness, Kenny Kearns, who's going to offer testimony. He's going to be my first witness on behalf of the ownership group. And Kenny's going to hit a lot of different things in his testimony, generally how we got to this site, how this project came to be, the different variations that were part of that, how they instructed their consultants to do their evaluations to make sure they were thorough, and how they ultimately drove the, quote, by right development that we believe we're seeking tonight. A couple of things to note as part of this development. It's an existing parking lot today, and we are all residents of Radnor, myself included, and parking in downtown Wayne is difficult. We understand that as part of what we're doing. So one of the things this applicant did right up front was find a way to supplement that parking. And you'll hear in evidence tonight that we are going to do one better than that. We have arranged for the parking spaces that were in this site to be moved to the parking lot in the rear. That lot will be striped in conformance with township code, and we will produce additional township parking beyond what's present today that can be used by the public. I think I've laid out what's going to happen over the next couple of hours tonight. If there are no questions for me, I'm just going to highlight a couple of exhibits that we have added to our package since our last hearing. and then we can get right to it if there's no questions for me.
Can we ask a question?
Not right now.
No, sir, the hearing's underway. No questions from anyone unless you're a party, and John Rice will direct that.
Okay. So what you have in front of you, and I've put a book over there as well on the table kind of next to me that some folks from the public, when they come up to ask questions or offer testimony, can look at. We'll also have the exhibits up on the screen for folks so they can all see it kind of at one time. But we have offered an update to Exhibit A3 and Exhibit A5, just complete plan sets. They were missing a few pages in the prior set. That is in your package. That should be, they should be included as A5 and A3. We've also added A14 as a CV for Chris Williams. We had previously intended to bring another traffic engineer. He thought better of attending tonight and went somewhere else, so we have Chris. No, there was a conflict based on the schedule, so Chris, who is at the same firm that prepared the traffic study, is here to offer testimony in that regard. We have A15, some updated renderings. A16 is some updated plantings that are resultant from some discussions with neighbors. And A17 is a parking layout study that's going to show exactly what's being proposed on that back parking lot. And so before I call Kenny, I do want to note, and you see a lot of folks here tonight they're going to give you some thoughts about how this project has moved along. What I can tell you about this applicant and this application and in previous is they have made efforts to communicate with the public. They have done what I consider to be a significant public outreach. Will that always net positive feedback from the public? It won't. But they are committed to the process, and they have started early in communicating with the public. And, you know, believe it or not, they welcome all the feedback we're going to hear tonight. And so we will be listening, and we'll be taking notes on what we hear. But there are updates to this plan that are directly resultant from conversations and meetings that this applicant has had with the township, with the neighbors, with staff, with neighboring business owners. So there's definitely a commitment to seeing this project better downtown Wayne. So if there aren't any questions for me from the board, I can have Kenny sworn, and we can get right into testimony.
Board? Good?
You're up, dude.
And if you raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Do.
State your full name and spell.
Kenneth E. Kearns, Kearns.
Okay, I'm going to give you this just so you have a copy next to you. Okay, Kenny. What is your involvement with the applicant, West Avenue GP?
I'm part of the partnership, the applicant of West Avenue GP.
Do you personally have any history of owning or developing property in Radnor Township, and more specifically, downtown Wayne?
Yes, I own several commercial properties on North Wayne Avenue, as well as Lancaster Avenue. I own an operating restaurant on North Wayne Avenue, 118 North. I'm a 20-year resident of the township.
And are you also involved in any community or civic groups that associate with downtown Wayne development?
Yes, in the past 15 years, I have been a member of the Radnor Township Planning Commission. I am currently a board member and president of the Wayne Business Association. I have volunteered for 9 years with Christopher Todd to run the annual Wayne Music Festival, involved in several other school board and township, or school district and township volunteer initiatives.
Sorry, so it is safe to say you are familiar with the developments in downtown Wayne and the impacts that developments have on businesses in that area?
Yes.
And you had mentioned that you're on the WBA, is that correct? Wayne Business Association?
Correct.
And are you able to offer any insight into what the WBA is working towards with respect to development in downtown Wayne?
Yes, sir. Currently, the WBA has evolved to taking on a role of helping identify initiatives that might help encourage businesses to, and make it easier for businesses to operate here and locate here with respect to zoning requests and zoning, modifications that we propose that would help the overall business environment here in Wayne. Being a actual business owner in Wayne, I have a real insight into what those issues are. And at the WBA, we kind of pool the different businesses that are in downtown Wayne to solicit feedback to help kind of address some of those issues.
And that background, your experience in Wayne, did that inform you as you considered whether or not to be involved in this specific project?
Yes, absolutely. This project, as Dave said earlier, is designated as a special use zone. It's obviously got a very important, there's a very important place in the development scheme of this township associated with this site and the two others identified. I thought it was very important to have somebody who is a real stakeholder, an investor, a resident, a community member, a volunteer, help develop something here that takes into consideration the other aspects of town and some of the things we're struggling with regards to parking and empty storefronts, and really develop a plan here that takes all that into consideration and addresses some of those things as opposed to what other potential uses could be on this site.
But just to be very clear for the record and for the board and the public, you're here on behalf of the ownership group
That's correct.
and in support of this project as an involved owner.
That's correct.
And let's just outline for the board specifically what we're proposing here tonight. We are proposing to redevelop the existing Bellevue AT&T parking lot. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's been identified by the township as a special use area.
Yes.
And this ownership group is proposing 52 residential condominium units.
With a small commercial component.
Correct. There'll be one commercial.
Suite.
Correct. And we're proposing 126 parking spaces.
Correct.
And 109 of those will be located partially below grade.
All of those, or all except for the surface spaces. I think it's 7 that serve the commercial suite.
And there will be a mix of residential units.
Correct.
There'll be, I believe this is correct, 15 one-bedroom units, 17 two-bedroom units, and 23 bedroom units.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And they range in size from 1,100 square feet to 3,100 square feet.
Correct.
And are you able to explain to the board how you all landed on this type of condominium development?
So the zoning that is in place today and the zoning ordinance for this special use allows a variety of uses. And we pretty much looked at every potential use for this site. Multifamily apartments, a mixed use with more significant retail. Under apartments, we looked at office component, we looked at standalone retail, all which comply with the current zoning. As we got into it and we started engaging some of the neighbors and stakeholders in the community, it drove us towards addressing issues related to traffic and parking and scale and school district impact and all the things that started to kind of shape the design of this thing. And, we really got convinced that what we're proposing here and the number of units as opposed to what this could be for apartments or retail or office or any combination of those was really important to be the lowest impact we could have on any traffic issues, any congestion issues that came up, and compared to what else was kind of by right for this site. So as we got into those conversations, we started to address all those issues, which drove us towards reducing the amount of commercial, and we'll get into some of the other kind of physical aspects that came up in those findings. But just the fact that we have, roughly 90,000 square feet of vacant retail in Wayne, and I'm really tracking that kind of closely and trying to help fill some of those holes, that really drove some of our decisions on how much retail we wanted to put here. We looked at density and traffic. It drove how many units we wanted to put here, and multifamily apartments would be a lot more units by right than what we're doing or proposing here for condominiums. So all of those things started to shape the design and the proposed development, which we ended up with here.
And so once you all landed on this project and this density and this mix, did you take this idea to the community?
So yes, we met with several community groups. We met with commercial neighbors. We met with commissioners. We met with township administration, just to, as we were going through this, take their temperature, including the Wayne Business Association, the North Wayne Preservation Alliance, just whoever we could kind of get opinions from to help making sure that we were listening to the community in terms of what some of the pros and cons were with this development, again, in the context of what the zoning ordinance allowed for. And yes, that certainly weighed into our discussions on how much retail we wanted to build here. The last thing we wanted to build is more empty retail. It defeats the purpose of what we're trying to achieve here as the WBA and as, as the town of Wayne, but also how traffic weighed into the number of units and should this be apartments and what that does to the school district, and how we ended up with condominiums was we really felt that this should be a project where people live that become residents of the township, not just apartment renters. All that weighed into the design of this.
And so all of your meetings with staff, with neighbors, with stakeholders, that ultimately shaped this proposed development. Is that correct?
Yes.
And looking kind of specifically with the meetings that you had, do you know how many meetings you've had with neighbor groups or neighbors?
We had several Zoom meetings with the both West Avenue neighborhood group as well as Bellevue. We've met with Ida next door, with Stacy Ballard, who's the neighboring commercial property, with John Kelly, who owns the building across the street, with the manager of Boyd's. Again, just really taking everyone's temperature as we went through this process to be not only a good neighbor, but also let them weigh in and let them be heard so that we could go back and address everything from design and construction materials to stormwater management. All of those aspects were brought into the process and drove us towards this design.
And to be clear, I know you mentioned a couple of associations and groups, but you did engage with residential stakeholders as well.
Yes, correct. The two neighborhood groups that were closest and most affected by this, of course.
Do you know when that last meeting was you had with a residential group or stakeholders in that regard?
Our last meeting, I think, was with the West Avenue and Bellevue combined. I think it was October 18th.
And some general takeaways maybe you could share with the board from kind of a series of those meetings, maybe things that have led to changes in the plans, or some general thoughts.
Yeah, of course, we got a lot of feedback, and we took a lot of it into consideration. We changed some of the colors and materials and kind of the feel-good aspects of the project as we went through it based on some of that feedback. But also with regards to some of the concerns the immediate neighbors had with landscaping and AT&T and what that looks like today and how we can improve that and how we could help use this project as a catalyst for some other changes that could improve things in that immediate area from what it is today. And I mean, the main takeaway is that change is never easy, especially in a township like Radnor, where we own some of the most important historic properties in the township that have a real meaning to this township in terms of their scale and their look and feel and their history. This project and this site was designated for a special use development. So we feel like we're the best group to manage this change in the most efficient way and the most low impact way for the neighbors. We were not, when we had this property under contract, there were several other bidders that were brought to people that were local developers that wanted to do much larger scale projects, would have a much more significant impact on everything from traffic to stormwater to school district. We convinced AT&T that because of our understanding of the township and the really important points of solving the parking problem and addressing stormwater and traffic and all other things that are happening around this site, that we were the best ones to kind of steward this process and deliver within the existing zoning code the best project for this important site. There are 3 sites in this township that were designated as a long time ago for this reason, because they become very important pieces of a much larger puzzle. We were looking at that larger puzzle because personally, I'm a significant stakeholder in this township. I volunteer a ton of time for it. I don't want somebody coming in here and running this thing over with a project that doesn't make sense for this town. The reason I got involved in this is because I care a lot about what happens here. The parking is tied to a lot of other things that I'm involved in and have investments in, and what happens on this site impacts a lot of other things that I'm involved with, including trying to help our town maintain its retail presence and keep it viable when we're comparing it to towns like Ellis Preserve and King of Prussia Town Center, or even Ardmore, where the density gets really tricky really fast. But we need to balance that with stuff that supports this business community, helps us thrive, helps us retain what we have, which is really special. And again, all of that, I'm a resident here. I'm very involved in the township. I'm very active. I see these people every day. They're my neighbors and my friends. I'm part of this because this group is the best group to figure out the way to do this the right way, understanding all of the other elements that go on in this township. And again, compared to what this could be by right, this was the path we chose because it made the most sense to check all those boxes.
And so one thing you had mentioned in that statement, I want to zero in on a little bit, but just kind of the idea of greater density on this site. One thing, you as a developer and being around developers, you see maximizing density here. When you say this project could have been more dense, how do you mean?
Well, the by right uses, for example, multifamily could have been the same exact size of the building, could have been 120 apartments,
okay,
as opposed to the 52, or somewhere in that neighborhood. But a much larger number of units, which means more cars, which means more kids in the school district, which means more congestion and traffic. Retail, if this was a retail standalone development, could also be much more traffic impact and create just much different things happening that come from this site. Again, our process drove us to this condominium, resident-owned, lower density in terms of number of units project, and minimizing the commercial component because, again, we don't want to add to some of the commercial challenges we have already today in the township. So all of those things came into consideration when we looked at what drove this design.
One comment we heard at planning, and you were there, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Was that some neighbors wanted to see a master plan for this development for the entire AT&T site. Do you remember that comment?
Yes, yes.
And can you speak to why that is not possible at this moment?
So AT&T originally, when they took this to market, wanted to sell the entire site, all the West Avenue parking lot, the existing building, and the Bellevue parking lot. There were other proposals to build a much larger scale development here across all three of those sites, which is one parcel. Again, my biggest concern and my conversation with AT&T, we met with them, I said, you're not going to get anything done in this township, and I personally will oppose you as the stakeholder, president of the WBA, and some other hats that I wear here. I will, unless we figure out how to replace that parking. You cannot remove the parking from this plan, period. And convince them that the right move was to allow us to relocate the existing township lease, which is a very old lease on the Bellevue lot, to the West Avenue lot. And in conversations with other retailers in town that are specifically the North Wayne Avenue and West Avenue retailers, that lot sits completely vacant every weekend of the year. It's incredibly frustrating as a business owner to hear people complaining about parking, and we have 100 and something parking spaces there potential that we could tap into. So the first step was convincing them that let's just focus on the lot, the Bellevue lot, which was the only lot that has the special use zoning to it. The other two lots do not have the same zoning density that's allowed because they weren't designated as these special use zones. It would require all kinds of variances, and you're talking about a much higher impact development. We steered them off of that for two reasons. One was the parking, and two was the existing zoning. And knew that we could get something achieved because of the fact that when we studied the existing zoning ordinance, what we were designing was all inside of those parameters, not needing to ask for any relief.
And your ownership group has no interest, no equitable interest or otherwise, at this point in that primary AT&T lot, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. We don't control it. AT&T chose to just subdivide off the Bellevue lot and sell that to us. They're going to retain the building. We don't know for how long. We had looked at that and what that would allow, and it's very complicated. There's a lot of technology in there and things that really no one knows. But the point is, we don't control it. We have zero control over that building and at all.
And that existing building area is outside of the currently designated special use area, correct?
That's correct.
One of the things you had just talked a little bit about, and I want to get to specific numbers, and we'll pull up Exhibit A17, is that back parking lot and the current parking lot. So are you able to speak to exactly how many parking spaces are on the front lot, the redevelopable lot today?
So the Bellevue lot that we are proposing this development on currently has 104 parking spaces.
104 spaces. And do you know how many parking spaces are being provided in the, I'll call it the new lot, and that's what's shown on Exhibit A17?
Yeah, so this exhibit shows the proposed West Avenue parking lot. This is striped to the current township code for parking with regards to parking space sizes, islands, those kind of things. And we can achieve roughly 127 spaces here.
And for clarity again, your ownership group does not have an equitable interest in this property either.
That's correct.
But AT&T is working with you to transfer that existing township lease to this back lot.
Our agreement with AT&T allows us to move the current lease with the municipality back to the West Avenue lot.
And as part of your application, you would accept as a condition that this parking as shown on Exhibit A17, be a part of your development.
Yes.
And you're not seeking any relief with respect to parking size, aisle length, anything with respect to what's shown on Exhibit A17?
That's correct. So we add basically 27 or 23 spaces to what we currently have access to for municipal parking.
And in your discussions with neighbors, have you advised, and staff and other stakeholders, have you advised of your intent to relocate parking to this back lot?
Yes.
And what was your general feedback?
From the commercial neighbors, everybody, I think, was consensus that this is a better location for public parking. We did some utilization studies on the current lot. We found that the highest, outside of the Fall Festival date, the highest usage of the current parking lot where we're proposing the development, just to be clear, on Bellevue, that lot didn't exceed 50 parking spaces at max usage. So you had 54 spaces vacant at any given time in that parking lot at maximum capacity.
And just to kind of drill down on that point as well, you have been studying that lot for some time, is that correct?
Yes, we've done not only a utilization study, but we also, further into the process, added cameras to track that on a daily basis.
And the maximum use at any time other than the one day you're saying was 50 cars?
Correct. And the one day, just to be clear, was when both North Wayne Avenue was closed off for the Fall Festival.
You and I have spoken before about the criteria for conditional use approval, is that correct?
Correct.
Another area of neighbor interest has been plantings and landscaping. Is that correct?
Yes.
And since some initial meetings with those neighbors, have you gone back and evaluated the possibility of some additional plantings off-site?
Yes, we have.
And those plantings would be made on the AT&T property, is that correct?
Correct.
And we've marked as Exhibit A15. Plantings that your ownership group has worked with AT&T and is willing to commit to make as part of this development, again, which would be off-site. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And are those plantings shown up on the screen right now on A15?
Yes.
And
correct.
there's a second sheet as well?
Yes.
And you've worked with your landscape architect to create these additional plantings, is that right?
We have.
And it's your belief that as these trees grow and mature, they will create a natural screen, much like you see on the opposite side of the street, is that correct?
Yes.
And the overall development itself, are you aware of any requests that your group is making of the township to be deficient in plantings in any way?
No.
You're making all the required plantings as part of this?
Yes, we are. I'm sorry.
While most of the specifics as to criteria are going to be addressed by your consultants, the first criteria this board has to consider is kind of suitability of this site for your project. And again, you've offered a lot of testimony tonight with respect to the special use area, but just as an idea and as a concept for this board, understanding suitability of the site, how many sites in the entire township have been designated as special use areas?
So there's 3 sites that are in the current BOD zoning that are considered special use. This is one. The newly redeveloped South Wayne parking lot next to behind the library is one, and the larger municipal lot on North Wayne Avenue behind the Wayne Presbyterian Church is the third.
And the uses we are proposing are specifically enumerated within those areas, is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you all performed a fiscal analysis?
Yes, we have.
And have we marked that as Exhibit A8?
Yes.
Are you able to summarize some of the findings that are in that study?
Yeah, I mean, generally, there were very, very significant fiscal impact to the township from a tax revenue standpoint. And again, everything, all of the studies supported what development we are proposing as far as it relates to positive impact on the township.
And that study has been submitted for review by the board?
That's correct.
And you used that study, which was performed in July of 2023, as a barometer, your group, as to whether or not to move forward with this project. Is that correct?
That's correct. One of the studies, yes.
And after review of that, you felt it was appropriate?
Yes.
And this study specifically analyzes the impact on schools. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the study found that this project would have an appropriate minimal impact on public schooling. Is that correct?
Yes.
I have no other questions from Mr. Kearns.
Okay. So that's the first witness, which means that all the parties, if they have questions of this witness, now's the time to ask questions. I'd ask you to come up to the podium, use that microphone, and ask Mr. Kearns any questions about what he just testified to. Not something else or some other topic, but what he just testified to. So I'm going to just go through the list of names, and I'll do this for every witness and see if you want to ask questions or not. Angus Ronald McGillivray. Any questions? No. Ryan Breyer? Okay, sir, come on up to the podium.
Mr. Kearns, you mentioned that as part of 60 West GP, you own or are part of a number of commercial properties. Can you just explain for us the experience you have in multifamily units?
My partner in this project, the Concordia Group, is a very experienced multifamily developer. They're our joint venture partner in this project.
Okay.
I'm sorry? Oh, Concordia Group, CONCORDIA Group, is our joint venture partner on this project and has significant multifamily development experience in the Mid-Atlantic and other areas.
And the fiscal impact, unless something has changed since the last exhibit, I think it estimated the 52 units at 1.5 million and led to what we would see on paper as very attractive revenue. Can you just help us explain the 1.5 million per unit valuation and how we got there?
So there's a range of units. We did a market study, obviously, to understand what units of this size and this type of location would sell for in this market. It was studied projects here, it studied projects in similar municipalities in the Northeast, came up with a per square foot kind of estimate of what these out sales would be. And there's unit sizes that range from the 700 square foot range to the larger range. So the average size is about a 1,800 unit, 1,800 square foot unit, which the math was in the study. It kind of backs you into how those numbers were allocated. But it's based on a market study on comparable sales, historicals, that kind of thing.
Okay. For a unit that size with 52 multifamily. Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian White, any questions? Henry Schramm, questions? Jeff Pearsall? Sir, come on up to the microphone.
Yes, I appreciate a very thorough look at the property at this point. I have three main areas that I'm interested in. One, I'll start with the one, since the picture's up there. One of it has to do with surrounding green space, setback from the Lancaster Avenue, and the aesthetics from a landscape point of view. Secondly, which you addressed but not specifically, architecture of the building as opposed to, you mentioned earlier, and one of my pet peeves is over at the Wegmans over in King of Prussia there, that you kind of call it a monstrosity of a development, way overdeveloped, the density and so forth. Every building is basically the same, squares, made of plywood, could blow over in a windstorm. And I surely don't want that type of apartment or condominium in our township. So architecture, I was involved with the...
Mr. Pearsall, I think there's an architect that will be testifying.
Okay,
about
but
that
I'm just
topic.
I'm bringing up the exterior aesthetics, and that is part of it. So yes, he wouldn't address that. But, and the third one was density, which I kind of alluded to before. So there may be other people that will address some of these questions. I don't know if my question is the aesthetic value, the size is still in question in my mind because of what I've seen at other locations, Newtown Square.
Mr. Pearsall, you have to ask a question.
Okay. All right, my question will be...
But you got to ask the question.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to explain where I'm coming from. My question is landscaping. I like this general idea along Bellevue here, but it surely does not show anything in regards to what the plan is up on Lancaster Avenue. I would hope that at least that much would be in front of the building as opposed to the building being right up on the curb. That was one. So my question is that, has that been addressed, looked at, and is the amount of green space integral to your plan?
Yes, I'm actually glad you brought that up because that was actually a very important driver when it came to discussions about their retail. So we looked at this site being originally all retail on the ground floor and some type of multifamily, whether it was condos or apartments above that. And if today on Route 30, you have a line of, I think it's 9 trees or 10 trees that are mature, healthy, beautiful. They're an amazing gateway into this township coming from the west. I was hell-bent on not touching those trees. And if we add more retail here, any significant national retailer that would evaluate this site would want frontage and parking on Route 30. We'd have to remove those trees. We'd have to cut the site back like it is at the neighboring properties from the movie theater down where you have the interior curb parking spaces, which is a logistical challenge from an egress standpoint, from a traffic standpoint, from a turning radius standpoint. So we're that was one of the initial drivers that steered us away from retail along 30. So we are committed to maintaining the existing trees that are there. We actually, if you look at this exhibit on the screen, you'll see we're adding a lot more than what's currently there today on just a paved parking lot, but there are cutout courtyards throughout the project which allow for more public space, more green space. We're proposing a green roof for this project. So, and from a stormwater management standpoint, this project is, I don't know what the calculations are, but there's basically nothing there today. So what we're proposing is above and beyond what is required for stormwater management for this site, and it will help mitigate some of the other issues that, again, came up in our conversations with some of the stakeholders in township and commissioners and challenges we're dealing with as a township. The frontage of this and the green space, preserving those trees and that presence in the township was one of the first things on our list that we're not going to deviate from.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I thank you. That's
And to your point, we went further down. We want to go down off the property we're proposing developing onto the AT&T site to help beautify that, because right now it's a big brick wall with bushes that are 50 years old, and then look at obviously the new parking structure on West Avenue. There's a tree bed there that we can beautify. Right now it's an ugly chain link fence. So even up along the drive between the buildings, we're adding trees and green space. So we were very focused on that as part of our development. Absolutely.
good. Well, I think it's very satisfactory.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Sandy Bauer, any questions? Carol Burns is not here. Brooke Hunt, questions?
Can you clarify for me? You had mentioned that AT&T was taking to market to rent out or to sell property. How did that evolve?
AT&T hired a national broker that was engaged to basically market this site to the public for purchase. They were somewhat selective in that I think they went to several developers that were somewhat local, had local knowledge, brought it to myself and my JV partner, who were both experienced in a township. And, we quickly understood how important it was, this site, to the township. And again, because of the other things that are associated with the parking and the traffic and retail and other things that we have a part of and investments in, our first exercise was how to solve the parking. And that was critical if we were in this meeting and we were saying we're taking away 104 parking spaces, we wouldn't be in this meeting. So that was the first step, was figuring out how to relocate the parking, and in this case, even add parking on the West Avenue lot, and then look at the existing zoning of the site and, start to structure what we develop here.
And just to add to that, you mentioned that they were thinking about selling the entire lot?
Initially, they marketed the entire lot for sale, yes, which was one single parcel.
Which is, how many acres is that?
It's 6.5 acres.
6.5 acres.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen Stovall is not here. John McGrath, not here. Elizabeth Maratea, any questions? Leslie Morgan, questions? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, go ahead, Leslie. Go ahead. I jumped ahead of my list, but.
Oh, it's fine. I just have one question at this point, Kenny. When they took it to market, and there was probably interest on the whole site, I agree with you, and thank you very much. I'm glad that there is a local developer, whether we like the plan as perfection or not, and we'll get into that maybe later in the January meeting. My concern has always been the clarity of that eyesore building. So while it's now this piece, I think all the residents are very interested in the potential of what will happen with the AT&T building, which I agree with you. Who knows what happens in that place? Who knows how much asbestos is in that place?
Question.
The question is, do you have further knowledge that you can share with us on your group or AT&T on what, if they plan to remarket that building after you get approval?
I wish I did, Leslie, but I don't. I just-
Okay.
yeah.
So we have that on the record. Thank you.
Wait a minute.
Over me before I had a chance to ask my question to Angus Rawley.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. John Aiken? Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks for saying it twice. Am I close enough to the microphone?
Yeah.
I am curious, are you the developer or you represent the developer?
I am part of the development team. I'm a partner of the development of the developer.
You're a part.
I am the developer, yes.
You're part of the developer.
Correct.
And are you a representative or a part of the developer?
I represent the developer.
You represent the company and you're part of the company?
Correct.
Okay. You talked about parking problems and resolving them. What did you see as parking problems and what did you do to resolve them?
So the parking problem as it relates to this lot is it's completely underutilized. When we have parking challenges in Wayne at peak times on weekends, there's no one in this lot. So it sits vacant. Part of solving the parking problem is the location on West Avenue from the commercial district standpoint is a much better location. There's already public parking, municipal parking there along West Avenue. It's just a much more natural location and much more pedestrian for parking. So that, and we're also adding 23 additional spaces that are currently there.
Back up on that a little bit. I had a question there. I wanted to interject. I'll try and come back to it. What have you done in terms of stormwater and the watershed of Radnor Township, our aquifers, and Darby Creek? And do I understand correctly that the stormwater and rainwater and flooding water goes into Darby Creek? Is that correct?
We're going to have a civil engineer who will testify. Mr. Lambert, maybe he's up next. He will testify about the whole stormwater.
Okay, so that's not his
Not
purview.
this witness. He
Okay.
didn't say a word about stormwater.
You talked about shepherding the project. Can you explain a little bit of that to me?
Well, yes, we are, in shepherding, I mean, meeting with our constituents and neighbors and commercial neighbors, residents, business owners, understanding what concerns they have with this.
May I interject?
Sure.
Before I forget what I want to ask about. I live on Bellevue, right across the street from the AT&T Tower, and they've been great neighbors over the decades that I've been there. Dang it, I got a bit of brain freeze there for a second.
Let's have Mr. Kearns finish his answer. You asked him, what did he do? What did he do to shepherd this project? So finish your...
Right, so we are, again, engaging with the immediate neighbors and stakeholders and township to help drive the design to address their concerns while we're taking it through the township process here.
I only learned about this project within the last 2 or 3 months when some of the meetings had started here, and that was the first I knew of it. And I was at the meeting, I went onto the list that you have as interested parties. I then got a phone call from someone in the company, from a gal. Her name was something like Durang or something, I'm not sure. She wanted my address so she could send me the information that everybody was getting by email. I did call, gave my address, I never heard from her, and nothing showed up. You said that you, working with the retailers, you got a lot of positive feedback from them. Did they have any concerns about that they expressed?
We had a really positive meeting with the general manager of Boyd's, who's excited about the project. We've met with retailers in the downtown district that are both part of the WBA and also just other neighboring retailers that were all very positive about having pedestrian residents in the BOD to help support the retail.
Now, the retailers, they have day hours, so they're not there in the nighttime or on the weekends. When you talked about traffic studies, and you made a point that the weekend is basically an empty parking lot. It's been empty for some years, and my question is it empty because of the reduction of the workforce at AT&T? Because the workers that work there, they used to park in that lot, and we didn't have access as to it, us folks on the street there, but we were allowed to use it in the evenings or on the weekends without any reprisal or such. Is the reduction of use in that lot in part due to the reduction of employees, and also when there are events in Radnor Township, that parking lot gets used somewhat, but many people don't want to have to walk down to the township, so could some of that reduction be because people just don't want to walk very far, and they'll go and fight over parking spots closer to whatever's going on?
Yeah,
So,
I'm not really sure.
So I don't know if Mr. Kearns can really offer testimony on AT&T's downsizing in workforce or why the parking lot is available now and it wasn't before. All he can offer is what's happening today. And so I think the question might be a little bit overbroad and just a little bit beyond what Mr. Kearns can actually offer factual testimony to.
I can't.
Okay. You talked about retaining what we have, not losing what we have in the township. How long have you lived in the township?
I've lived here for 20 years.
20 years. I've lived here about 72 years. I'm in my 70s. My family moved here when I was 3. What is it that in that period of time you saw that's in danger of being lost?
In the town, I'm more concerned with preserving the existing fabric that makes our town special.
How would you,
in the downtown?
What is that existing fabric? You're talking about a social fabric?
Both social, scale, architecturally, all those things that, but also preserving the business viability as a business owner, understanding that a project like this could have a very significant positive impact on local business.
So you have quite an investment in it, whether it's time or energy or money or anything like that. Did you address trash pickup at all in your presentation?
We did not.
Okay, I won't ask him that. So I can only ask questions but not make statements. Okay. Stormwater. You talked about low impact. What did you understand that if it was high impact, what would that be? Additional traffic problems?
My discussion about low impact was lower impact than other potential developments for this site that meet the existing zoning.
Did you make any comments about the environment? Did I hear anything about the environment in this? So I shouldn't ask him a question on that then. There'll be other witnesses. Okay. Trees, resolving parking, trash, realtors, positive. Low-density housing. There was a lot of talk in the country over the last few years of low-density but affordable housing. Now, this is going to be 50-plus units in a small space, and you define that as low-density housing.
I didn't call it low density. No, and we didn't speak about affordable housing either.
You also mentioned a township. I didn't quite get it, but the Radnor Township's plan, do you recall making reference to the plan of Radnor Township? I don't quite remember how you worded it, but I was curious what you were referring to as far as the township's plan into the future, or do you recall?
No, I don't recall.
Okay. Well, that's all I'll ask at the moment. You didn't get into trash pickup or emergency vehicles getting into the property.
We did not.
Is there only one? Okay, that's all for the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Solis, not here, I believe. Mr. Massaro, any questions? Mr. Alicio, any questions? Mr. Gilmore, any questions? Ms. Delizia, any questions? Mr. Prima, any questions? Kathleen Wright, any questions?
You're doing great, Ken.
Mike Belitsaris, any questions? Eileen Ware, any questions? Diane Klassen, any questions? Michael Lahota, any questions? No. Chris Todd, any questions? Reed Taylor, any questions? Deanna Doan, any questions? And Scott Gemsler, any questions? Okay.
John, I think Mr. McGillivray might have had a couple of questions.
He is.
Has there been any formal study on what could be done with the AT&T building as far as turning it into residence or tearing it down? Anything formally done, other
There is-
than your opinion?
Not to my knowledge.
That the township has no knowledge of what can be done in the future on that property?
That's beyond what Mr. Kearns can testify to.
Sir, can I get your name, please?
He's the first guy on the list, John.
Oh. Okay.
Ron McGillivray.
Okay. Does the board, anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Kearns about his testimony?
Hello, Mr. Kearns. I had a question about you talking about the two parking lots and the preference of sort of the businesses within Wayne of one over the other. And also some suggestion that maybe nobody wants to walk to either of them because they're far away. Is it your opinion that the west lot is actually preferable to the current lot?
It is.
And why would that be?
So based on the utilization study, it's clear that it's not being fully utilized, even in high traffic times and on weekends and high peak hours. But the pedestrian connection is better because you have immediate, there's actually already existing municipal parking there. The traffic flow seems better. That's kind of a more natural movement. It's just, that's the opinion, also the opinion of others that have kind of, we've polled on it.
As if people would rather walk down west than walk down Lancaster, perhaps?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there's no, yes.
My only other question, and you said it and I just missed it, is that currently the township leases the front lot. And you would own the west lot and lease it back, or have the lease transferred, the township lease transferred to the west lot?
Yes, AT&T will retain ownership of that lot, but our agreement allows us to move the lease to those parking spaces.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, thank you. Dave, can you put up the visual of that West Avenue parking lot?
17, I think, Rob. The new lot, right, Jake?
Correct.
Yep.
Now, Mr. Kearns, why do you believe the AT&T folks are comfortable with people parking in this lot?
They, to my knowledge, don't fully utilize it. If you drive by any point in the day, it's nowhere near capacity. Our initial meeting with them was that this is the way to get something done here on the Bellevue lot, was to have a solution for the township because of the challenges we have in the business district. When we got into studying it and realized you can actually add 25 spaces or so, which is a lot, given the issues that we have. You know, this just started to, again, it just made more sense from being able to add spaces, and this was their way to get something done on the other lot.
Yeah, my experience with this lot and the engineers who work there is they are very, they're very careful of who has access to that lot. Now, Dave, can you circle that area on, it would be to my right, the equipment? Are you guys aware of what that equipment is?
Yes. So there's walls and bollards and things there that protect that equipment. It is kind of separated off from the lot, but currently there are parking spaces along that row.
But do you agree that AT&T considers that sensitive equipment?
Yeah, but AT&T ownership who is allowing us to do this. But yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about the particulars of that equipment, but right now there's parking there.
Okay, I mean, just for my colleagues, I would want to hear from AT&T that they would be comfortable with residents using this lot. I mean, they've kicked neighbors off in the past.
Well, if the lease gets transferred, I think AT&T would be comfortable with resident parking there. That's got to be a condition of any kind of development.
And we've agreed to that condition. Based on our discussions with AT&T and our agreement with them, they understand that this is going to be public parking.
I think Commissioner Abel's more concerned that they are in agreement.
Sure, and so again, if it's a condition of our development, we couldn't move forward until the lease was transferred to you all. So that would be on our list of things to do and a burden for us to meet. I can also ask him a question, Jake. I think it's pretty important. It touches a little bit on the use of this parking lot. So previously, I think in front of the Planning Commission, we had some discussion about why this parking lot couldn't itself be developed and why we couldn't move this application to the back of the lot. And Kenny, is it your understanding that there is infrastructure underneath this lot that would preclude vertical development?
Yeah, that and then also this doesn't have the same zoning designation that the special use site has. You're up against the train tracks, you have residential next door neighbors. There was just a lot of complexities here.
Okay. To go back to the landscaping, it seems like this is a big deal for the neighbors, but you're putting the landscaping on the AT&T building property, which you don't have ownership of, and it sounds like it's likely to sell at some point in the future. What's to say that landscaping will be kept? So why make that the site of the landscaping and not a place where it will we have more confidence that it will be permanently maintained?
Well, so we are seeking no relief from landscaping. So we're going to landscape the current project in accordance with the code on site. This is just an additional landscaping request that was made by neighbors beyond what's otherwise required. So the current site's going to be landscaped and planted in accordance with the code. This was a request that we plant there. And so we went to AT&T and we said, can we plant some extra trees? And they said, sure.
So
But it will not be
AT&T
used.
will put something in writing that says that they're willing to do that, right?
That allow us to make those plantings, yes. And these trees will not be used in any way to subtract from the required trees that are part of our development. These are just additional plantings being made by the applicant in response to requests from the neighbors.
Okay. You also mentioned on the Bellevue lot, cameras and data that was compiled over, several dates. Was that part of the packet?
It was not part of the packet. So it's, I believe, a constant video footage of the parking lot, so they can run continuous counts to see. It was internal for the applicant.
Okay. I mean, I think that'd be nice to see, those data counts. Just, I don't disagree with your numbers, but I'd also like to take a look at the data. To go back to the Zoom meetings with the neighbors, how did you land on who to contact and who not first of all, how did you contact the neighbors? Was it by letter? Was it by, did you go knock on every door? And then, second question to that, how did you decide which neighbors to contact, and what was that area?
I know a few of the residents on West Avenue that are friends of mine. Asked them to provide a list of their neighborhood list from West Avenue. We did an email outreach. We had an initial in-person meeting, walked them through the initial concept plan, got their feedback on all kinds of things. And then the second round was I went door to door at Bellevue, put letters in mailboxes, got an email. They had assembled that group. We had a Zoom meeting there. And then the third go-around was, I think, a combined group of both of those neighborhood groups. But they're the neighbor, and some of those were included. I think others got included on Francis and some other of the streets that come off of West. But it was really kind of door to door.
I mean, can you ballpark how many houses were contacted?
20, 25? There's not that many houses between this corner and the end of West, and then Bellevue, I think there's 8 residents or so. So I did those door to door. I went to every mailbox there.
Yeah, as you can see from the neighbors in the room, the area of concern, I think, broadens past Bellevue and West, so it might have been a better idea to go a little bit farther, but it's good knowing that the process that was taken and the number of people that were contacted.
And Jake, they did work through the North Wayne Preservation Alliance as well.
How many addresses are part of that alliance?
I don't know.
A handful, probably 4 or 5. It was the NWPA's board, but again, we just wanted to get every association or whomever it was in just understanding what this was before we entered this into the public forum.
Okay. All right. Well, no, I appreciate those answers. Those are my questions for now.
Are you referring to A3, sheet 3?
Sheet 3, the subdivision plan. Yeah, just, Mr. Kearns, so this is the entire AT&T site, and parcel B is what's being subdivided off. Your group's going to purchase it, and that's going to be proposed to be developed, right?
Correct.
Okay. The middle piece is the building, the existing building, that will stay.
Correct.
And is there any agreement between your group and AT&T to develop that piece?
We have a right of first refusal should they sell that in the future,
Okay,
but it's our right, it's our option.
okay. And then the back piece is the parking lot that we're talking about, that the existing parking lease will be transferred over to that,
Correct.
Subject to the same terms.
Correct.
Okay. And the right of first refusal, is there some term on that? Is there 20 years, 10
There
years?
there is a time frame on them. 5? Yeah, 5 years.
5 years.
Please don't yell questions out from the audience. Please wait your turn to ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And the parking lease, the transfer of the lease, AT&T has the existing lease. They know the terms. Is it going to be exactly the same terms that we're talking about?
That's our understanding, yes. That is our understanding, yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
And John,
And I have a quick follow-up on that. Is there going to be a subdivision of parcel A to cordon off the parking lot?
So there is, Mr. Lambert's going to offer testimony on the subdivision process. And I just want to make one clarification on a question from Mr. Rice to Kenny. Kenny, while you have a right of first refusal, you do not have any development plans for parcel A at this point.
Correct.
And do you know the existing term of the parking lease?
I don't.
He does not know the expiration of the lease.
Commissioner Riley has a question.
So, question on the new design of the parking lot.
17?
Yeah, sorry. So on the far upper left, like there's parking spots there, which weren't there before, and I know you're adding because you're getting up to 127. Will there be something there that at nighttime, if somebody's pulling in with their lights on to park, that could block the light so it's not hitting the neighbors that are next to that? Because I'm pretty sure they didn't have parking spots over there in the old plan. It might just be plantings or something, or fence or something.
We can certainly work with AT&T to put in some screening planting.
Anything else from the board? Okay. Mr. Falcone, you're done?
I'm done with Mr. Kearns. I don't know whether Norman needs a break.
Yeah, let's take about 5-10 minute break. Okay.
I'm going to call it 5 minutes. It's 8:07, so come back at 8:12.
Nice work.
I'm sorry. I will, yeah.
You can add it to your collection. You probably have. And then you know where they go. Yeah, you have a stack of those somewhere.
We can have them when we're on break. We can have them when we're on break.
Yeah, you're all of your wise words. Yeah. I'm going to defer and keep it you.
I'm like, I think he got this point. I don't know, you know. So.
Best I can do in day up.
In 8 minutes.
Yeah, this afternoon. That was today. This afternoon's project. That's thanks. Good. Still, I'm gonna use for
You were great. You were great.
either on one side of the table or the other. We've all been there.
Question so far, who they're going to grill is Chris. Right. Yeah, you're going to get smashed.
Yeah, it's nothing. But it's all perception. In the spirit of keeping it tight, if you do want to list all 10 intersections that I studied, you feel like we need to do that, I'm fine. I'll go quick.
I would say you did that because like, it shows that you've done this exhaustively.
Hi, we're looking at 1 minute to reconvene.
Do you ever get cramps in your hands? Your back, shoulders, not the hands, but your back. Your back gets tight. Yeah.
We've kind of ignored it.
All right.
to get into that memo.
What's that?
You don't want to get into the memo.
I don't need to.
Okay.
If we need to refer to it in Q&A, I will, but I don't need
Okay.
to in my testimony.
On the study. Got it.
Mr. Falcone, are you ready to go? Dave?
Yes.
You ready?
We are.
I think we're missing one commissioner, but it sounds like he's on his way in. Okay. Thank you all. We will restart. Mr. Falcone, please call your next witness.
Thank you. I'd like to call Rob Lambert, please.
May I ask everybody to stop talking? The hearing is reconvened, and the court reporter needs it to be silent in the room. Thank you.
I do. Robert Lambert,
Rob, who are you employed by?
Site Engineering Concepts.
And what's your position with site engineering?
I'm a principal there.
And can you describe your educational and professional experience, please?
I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Notre Dame and a graduate degree in civil engineering from Villanova University.
And we've marked as Exhibit A12 a copy of your CV. Is that an accurate representation of the experience you just described?
Yes, it is.
And have you previously offered testimony on behalf of applicants in municipal hearings in the area of civil engineering?
Many times.
And have you been admitted as an expert in the area?
Yes.
And in Radnor Township?
Yes.
I would move to have Rob admitted as an expert in civil engineering, please. Thank you. Rob, did your firm prepare the plan sheets that we're looking at tonight, marked A3?
Yes, we did.
And were those plans prepared under your supervision or by you directly?
Yes,
You're thoroughly familiar with them?
I am.
Using the plans that we've marked as Exhibit A3, can you describe for the board what the current condition of the property is?
Yes, I believe everybody's familiar with the site, but just for the record, I'll run through. So I'm looking at Exhibit A3, Sheet 1 of 8. There's a series of plans here, and on Sheet 1 in the middle of the page, there's an aerial photograph, and then there's a cross-hatching. So the cross-hatching is the overall AT&T property that was referred to previously. On the bottom of the page, going left to right, you can see Lancaster Avenue. At the top of the page, going from kind of right to upper left, is the railroad track. So you can see the AT&T property spans between the two.
And just real quick for the board's purposes, this is one of the supplement exhibits I handed you tonight, slipped into your package, the new sheets, A3. So that would be the entire packet that Mr. Lambert's going to be speaking to tonight.
Correct. I believe the only difference was the original packet didn't have all the sheets, and we just supplemented to make sure it had all the sheets. So Exhibit A3, Sheet 2, this is the existing conditions survey. It has the same orientation as the previous plan. Lancaster Avenue is at the bottom of the page, left to right. Off the kind of the top of the page is the railroad, and then you can see West Avenue, which has a little bit of an S-curve. The building, AT&T building that was referenced, is in the kind of brown tannish color. All the paved areas are in gray. The subject lot is what was referred to as the Bellevue lot. So from Lancaster Avenue, which is at the bottom of the page, it's closest to that. So it's the area of parking that is closest to Lancaster Avenue. You can see Bellevue's on the left-hand side going top to bottom.
And Rob, you heard all the testimony tonight from Kenny, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And was all of that testimony consistent with your understanding of the project?
Yes.
And you agree with the information that Kenny provided?
Yes.
And using your plans, can you identify the area of development and briefly speak to what is being proposed as part of this development?
Yes, so using Exhibit A3 sheet, this is 3. This plan shows, this is the subdivision plan. So you can see on this plan, again, same orientation as the previous page. Parcel B is over the area that was referred to as the Bellevue lot. You can see a line going from left to right. It's a long dash with 2 short dashes. That is the proposed property line that will separate Parcel B from Parcel A. So Parcel A will be the remaining AT&T lot, and that includes the parking on West Avenue that was referred to by Mr. Kearns.
And with respect to subdivision, the property as it sits today is one parcel, is that correct?
That is correct.
But the proposed development, as you've identified on Parcel B, will be part of a subdivision and land development application that will be made separate from this conditional use application, is that correct?
That is correct.
And this conditional use application is a threshold item to move this project forward to land development and subdivision, is that correct?
Correct.
And one of the criteria that will be considered primarily during that process, the subdivision and land development process, is stormwater management. We did hear a question a little bit about that tonight. Is the site currently controlled by stormwater management?
No, there is no stormwater management. As you think of kind of rate or volume control, there's a little bit of conveyance, but there is no control of the stormwater.
So to a layperson, what does that mean?
That means all the water runs off onto Lancaster Avenue and winds up in South Wayne.
And as part of this new development, does the applicant need to meet the township's stormwater management criteria as part of land development?
Yes.
And have you incorporated adequate stormwater management into your initial plans?
We have.
And the stormwater management that is being proposed is code compliant, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Does it exceed the township's code?
Yes. We've, and I'm going to skip to, first I'll go over Exhibit A3, Sheet 4 quickly, and then I'll jump to, I believe it's Sheet 6. So Sheet 4 is the proposed plan. This shows in the left-hand side a demolition plan. So you can see everything marked in red would be removed. So that's the existing Bellevue parking lot. We have the proposed plan, which is really in the center of the page. You have the brown, which is really the building coming up out of the ground. Lancaster Avenue again down the bottom. You can see the U-shape with green courtyards facing Lancaster Avenue, which the architect will talk about more thoroughly. And then what was referred to as the below-ground parking is shown in the bottom left. I just wanted to kind of orient you to the proposed plan as we go over the stormwater. So the bottom left is actually under the building, right? And so that's kind of in the building there. We just have a inset showing what would be kind of down on that basement level. So I'm going to go to sheet, I believe it is sheet 6 of A3. This is the stormwater management plan. So one of our directives, knowing the issues in Wayne with stormwater, was to provide a robust stormwater system on site. We have proposed a large system in the upper right-hand corner of the site. So you can see it's a kind of an L shape up in the corner. We've considered the entire site a meadow condition to start with, and so that kind of exceeds right off the bat what the township would require for stormwater, and then we have to meet all the rate requirements. I believe somebody asked about the watershed. It's the Darby Cobb's watershed that will be controlling the stormwater. The stormwater system is just under 19,000 cubic feet, so I think that's about 140,000 gallons. I know some of the township stormwater systems have been referred to in gallons to put it in perspective. So it's a large stormwater system that's going to be controlling the runoff from the site. And then that overflow from that system, should it occur or when it occurs, would connect to existing drainage pipes out on Lancaster Avenue.
And just to boil it right down, is it your opinion that the condition post-development will improve the existing conditions?
We will be reducing the rate of runoff leaving the site.
And just to be clear, all of these plans and the criteria will be reviewed specifically by the township and its consultants during the land development process. Is that correct?
Yes, there will be an extensive review.
And you'll be given review letters, and you'll work with the township's engineer to make sure that all the things you're saying today are actually part of this development.
Yes.
And have you also considered, as part of your engineering review, the impact on township services?
Yes, we have.
And what was your conclusion there?
We believe it'll be a minimal impact, especially in comparison to some of the other approved uses or permitted uses.
And as to general code compliance, have you reviewed the township's zoning code?
Yes, I have.
And on this exhibit A3 sheet, I think it was 3, have you included, sheet 4, I apologize, a zoning summary?
Yes, there's a zoning summary in the top middle of sheet A3, sheet 4.
And is the project as proposed, otherwise compliant with the zoning summary?
Yes, it is.
As to building height, can you talk about how the building height is calculated?
So the building height, interestingly enough, the Wayne Business Overlay has a different definition of building height than the rest of the township. And really what it's focused on is the Lancaster Avenue corridor. So it measures the height of the building from the midpoint, or from the mean grade along the frontage to the highest point of the roof.
And what is the proposed building height?
55 feet.
And at that, is it consistent with the code requirements?
Yes, it is.
And as part of your engineering, have you evaluated tree impact?
Yes, one more thing on height. I just wanted to note that the table on A3, sheet 4, was a previous iteration of how we were measuring the height. So it was listed as less. It is actually the 55 feet, which I just testified to. Yes, we looked at landscaping.
And the impact on existing trees?
Yes, we have.
And what was your charge from this applicant?
To preserve the tree canopy along Lancaster Avenue. So I'm looking at sheet A, Exhibit A5, sheet 1, which is the landscape architect's existing conditions plan. And you can see the large circles along Lancaster Avenue, which is the tree canopy that currently exists along Lancaster Avenue. So we actually pushed the building a little bit further back from Lancaster Avenue to be able to preserve those trees. We've had an arborist look at them to look at that impact, to be able to preserve that tree canopy.
And it's your belief that you'll be able to preserve them?
Yes.
Are you otherwise seeking any relief with respect to planting or landscaping?
We are not, no.
And are the proposed setbacks shown in the plans with respect to the building consistent with the code requirements?
Yes, they are.
And did you calculate existing and proposed impervious coverage?
Yes, we did.
And what is the existing coverage on the site?
The existing coverage, and my eyes aren't very good. Hang on one second. So the existing coverage is about 48,957 square feet, and the proposed is 63,000 square feet, which is about 83%, which is compliant with the 90% permitted.
And you're aware that there's going to be 52 residential units and 1 personal service or retail shop, is that correct?
I am.
And you've calculated parking as well?
Yes.
How many spaces are required?
126.
And how many are being proposed?
126.
Looking more generally, is the proposed project from an engineering perspective inconsistent with the township's comprehensive plan as you understand it?
Yes, as I understood it.
It is consistent.
Yes,
And you're familiar with the general area in which the project is being proposed, is that correct?
very familiar.
And you've done engineering projects in Radnor Township in this general vicinity?
Yes, I have.
And is it your opinion that the project is appropriate with respect to use?
Yes.
Is it consistent with the character of the area surrounding the location?
Yes, it is.
And does this use fit within the township's special use area designation?
Yes, it is.
Based on your experience in engineering in Radnor Township, will it injure or detract from the use of any of the surrounding properties?
No, it will not.
Can you identify the uses that immediately abut this property?
Yeah, so working kind of, I'll go clockwise, starting obviously we have the AT&T building. In the upper right-hand corner is a former bank building that was converted to office. Going to the right, I'm sorry, using Exhibit A3, Sheet 4, or Sheet 3. Going to the right is a small strip center of varying retail establishments. Going across the street, which aren't identified on this plan, but there's a series of commercial buildings directly across the street.
And as to access points, has the project been designed to limit the number of access points?
Yes, when we laid out the project, we looked at originally a access on Lancaster Avenue. Between the trees, existing access points, and really a desire to have I believe the code actually wants you to have access off of the secondary street versus the primary street. We have a single access in generally the same location as the existing AT&T driveway on Bellevue Avenue.
And during the Planning Commission, there was specific discussion about taking access directly from Lancaster Avenue, but that access point, it would be to the, I guess, to the right or the east side of Parcel B. That access point would not be feasible based upon the property lines, is that correct?
Correct, and there's an existing access for, I believe it's on-site parking, but it's public parking that's parallel to Lancaster Avenue that comes out at that point.
Have you considered and planned for trash in this building?
Yes, there's a area inside the building, really in the upper right-hand corner, that will be for loading and trash.
And then assuming this project were to obtain conditional use approval, what are the next steps?
We would have to go through the land development, so we would continue the design, further the design, submit a preliminary plan, submit a final plan, and go through the township process. In addition to that, we would have outside agency approvals with an NPDES permit, which is National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, which is a county enforced permit for erosion and sediment control and stormwater. And then we would have the planning module for sanitary sewer.
And items such as, like you had mentioned, stormwater, grading, water, all of those things will be reviewed and discussed during land development?
Extensively.
And it's also reviewed at the county level, is that correct?
Yes.
And if this project is ultimately approved, it'll then move to a permitting phase, is that correct?
That is correct.
And the permits will be issued by the township and overseen by regulatory agencies, is that correct?
Yes.
And is there any portion of this project or the intended construction that would deviate from an ordinary or customary construction or development project?
No.
No additional questions for Mr. Lambert.
Okay, Mr. Lambert's civil engineering, and I'm going to start at the top of the list, Angus Ronald McGillivray.
So you're talking about the stormwater control, and I don't remember if you talked about the green roof.
Correct. There is a green roof proposed as part of the stormwater management.
So my question is, who will be maintaining the green roof? And what happens if there's leaks?
So it would be the association would be maintaining, they have to maintain the grounds. That would include the roof, maintain the green roof, and any associated maintenance and operation of it.
And there's nothing better than a tree, the deep roots of a tree, to control stormwater. So if the trees are on the property, how many years will the developer commit to, the survival of the trees? And is that something that will be taken over by the homeowners association?
Correct. There's a warranty period with the installation of the trees, and then the HOA or the association will then be responsible for the maintenance of the property.
Thank you.
Mr. Lambert, Mr. Cairns mentioned that throughout the process, you evaluated both Parcel A and Parcel B as potential opportunities. As part of the process, did you do any valuation or analysis on Parcel A?
We did not. We really focused on Parcel B, the proposed development parcel.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned that parking off of Lancaster wasn't feasible given to the property lines. Was there any analysis done to limit the car traffic on Bellevue, potential option to the east of Parcel A that would exit onto West Avenue as an option?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You mentioned that the entrance into the property off of Lancaster wasn't feasible. Is that correct?
It wasn't desired, right? On the far east end of the property, it was not feasible due to existing driveway cuts. That pushes that driveway much closer to Bellevue, that you'd have to propose, kind of a mid-block. It would remove a lot of the canopy trees along Lancaster Avenue, and really change the nature of that right there. And we were using the existing access, generally the existing access point into the AT&T parking lot that exists.
Thank you. And is a proposal off to the east side of Parcel A an option to enter the property, or no?
We do not control any of the Parcel A. That's all AT&T.
Okay. So if there were an option, though, it could be possible if AT&T were to concede rights to the east side of Parcel A to exit out on West Avenue to limit or not have an entrance off of Bellevue.
Yes, it would be feasible. There's an existing parking lot there that accesses out to West Avenue. But again, we do not control that property.
Thank you.
And Rob, just to piggyback that existing parking lot that you're just referencing, that is what houses now, or will house, all of the AT&T employee parking. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Sorry about that. Brooke Hunt, any questions? Elizabeth Maratea, any questions? He waved.
I guess my concern is all these cars are going to come out from 102 or 126 cars are all going to enter and exit on Bellevue.
So we are going to have a traffic consultant offer testimony, traffic expert, who will speak to
So
all the
that's
traffic.
who we need to speak to about, because.
He's coming up. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but he'll be up.
Is that correct? All those cars are coming out?
Yes, we have a driveway that accesses Bellevue to access all of our parking.
Right, that's the main entrance.
Correct. And Chris Williams will be here to answer, I think,
Right.
further questions from her.
Okay. John Aiken.
Thank you.
I was going to ask you a traffic question, but that's in a different category.
That's the next person.
Yeah. You're an engineer.
Correct.
I would assume that a fair amount of attention was given to environmental impact, whether it's floodwaters, wastewater, runoff water. There are a lot, all of the rainwater and the drain water goes into Darby Creek and to our local aquifer and watershed, is that correct?
It was the Darby-Cobb's watershed, yes.
Say again?
It's known as the Darby-Cobb's watershed.
Okay, but it all goes into the local watershed in Darby Creek.
Yes.
Throughout the township, we have a lot of drains in the streets and in the parking lots. To focus on one area in the Wawa store that's just right next to Boyd's there, right in those few buildings there. In the Wawa parking lot, they have large drains for all of the water to go down. So all that water ends up.
I'm not familiar with the Wawa site.
Okay, well, there are drains all over the township. So all of the wastewater, rainwater runoff is going into that and going into Darby Creek and our local aquifer and watershed. What also goes down those drain pipes is an enormous amount of plastic utensils, plastic cups, plastic covers, potato chip bags, food wraps, metal cans. Okay. Have you addressed the debris and trash that gets washed down into the township drains that ends up in our watershed and aquifer and Darby Creek?
I was going to clarify that.
From our... Sorry, it was a broad thing, but yeah.
From our site and then, it's parcel B, we will have a series of inlets that will connect to an underground stormwater system. Those inlets will likely have an outlet hood on them, which will collect floatables and prevent it from getting into the system, which then prevents it from getting out into the watershed. And that's just a routine maintenance item that the HOA will have to.
Of course, the problem would be solved if all of this refuse didn't go down the drains to begin with, that if people actually put it in trash cans. So I was just curious about that. In the Wawa, again, in the back of the Wawa, they have a wooden fence, and there are signs all along the fence for fire lane, no parking. There is parking there all day long. That is one of many statutes, ordinances, and codes that aren't enforced in the township, whether it's parking, traffic control, and things like that. My question is, what thought have you given to an emergency situation with the condominiums in terms of, I understand there's only one exit and entrance into the underground parking. Is that correct?
Yes.
And to get to that, you have to, if I touch this, will it do an arrow thing?
No.
Okay.
You can use the mouse, though.
The entrance is on Bellevue between the proposed building and the AT&T building. So my understanding is that you would have to come in all the way. Is the entrance to the where's the entrance to the parking lot underground?
On the east side of the building, if you look at the exhibit
Can you point it out?
A3 exhibit, so it's on the
Oh, there is a mouse.
on the right side of the building. You'd come in off of Bellevue. There's a driveway along the east property line, and then that would be the entrance.
And the entrance to the underground
is actually
driveway is up here.
Closer to Lancaster Avenue.
So,
you
so
come
they would have
down.
to come all the way in here and down there. How wide is that lane for getting in and out? And I'm just thinking in terms of an emergency. My job in the military was firefighter, emergency responder, and we had to solve problems before they happened. What would happen if, say, a car with an electric battery combusted down there have you given thought to access for emergency vehicles is my question.
So this site actually has good access. We have, Lancaster Avenue to the south. We have Bellevue to the west. You have a drive aisle all the way across the north side of the building, along with the ramp along the east side of the building. So you almost have access to all four sides of the building, which is, quite frankly, a little bit unusual for a building like this. So you have lots of emergency access to this building.
I think the question is, there's only one way in and out of the parking garage, correct?
Correct.
So the question that...
Let me clarify.
Let
me clarify.
The question
We
Mr.
have
Aiken
one.
has is what happens if there's a fire on that driveway going into the parking?
We have one vehicular access into and out of, right? There are pedestrian
That's
access.
his question, though, not everything else.
Well, he asked about emergency services is what his question was, right? The way I understood it.
I asked if there was a single entrance to
Yes,
the
there's a
underground
single
parking,
entrance.
as well as emergency procedures for something that might happen, because in the news on a regular basis, there are car batteries that combust, explode, and burn. It's in the news on a regular basis. Different question. Water pressure. Will the water pressure in the neighborhood be affected by the additional draw on water access?
We will coordinate our water service with Aqua. Aqua PA provides the water. We have a will serve letter from them saying they will provide the service. I do not control Aqua's pressure.
Okay, so you're saying you will talk to them, but I'm assuming that you haven't yet.
We did. There's a document that's called a will serve letter. So we send a request to Aqua and say we were proposing a building with 52 units and a small commercial piece. Please confirm you will provide service to us. And they send that letter saying, yes, they are going to provide service.
Okay, my last questions currently are about traffic, parking, and entrance. I understand that the entranceway can't be put on West Avenue, that it has to go on Bellevue and isn't going to go on Lancaster Avenue. Now, up and down Lancaster Avenue, entrances to condominiums and apartments and businesses are from Lancaster Avenue. We're about the Bellevue Avenue, the traffic infrastructure. Bellevue is not designed for heavy traffic. Also, we have a no truck sign on the street, but trucks.
Question. Ask him a question.
Okay.
Please. No speeches, just questions.
Okay. Would you give me a concise answer to why the entrance can't be either on Lancaster Pike or on West Avenue? And why is it not on West Avenue? And will we residents not bear the brunt of traffic problems, traffic
Aiken,
jams?
You were doing well until you started saying, will we residents? Ask them why it has to be on Bellevue.
Right.
Not on
Why
Lancaster.
does it have
That's
to be
the
on
question.
Bellevue where we residents will bear the brunt of the effect and impact?
So you first asked about West Avenue. We do not have any frontage on West Avenue, so we cannot provide a driveway to West Avenue. Lancaster Avenue, I think I explained, we were looking at the tree canopy and the existing public parking access that is on the east side of Lancaster Avenue. So then that pushed the driveway to Bellevue to be able to preserve the tree canopy. One of the township ordinances does talk about having a secondary, using the secondary road versus the primary road. I believe they refer to it as lesser traveled road to be able to provide the driveway access. And so that's why the driveway is on Bellevue.
What, if anything, will happen to the permitted parking on Bellevue? Because some of us residents will park in front of our house. If a car is parked on Bellevue, two cars cannot safely get by each other, and one will have to stop, they'll go through, and then they'll continue. So there's traffic jams that can happen there. My question.
I think that was the question.
Well, let me. Yeah, that was good. But let me follow up with that question. Are you going to improve Bellevue, your side of Bellevue? You're going to widen it?
We are not proposing any widening of Bellevue.
Okay.
Will parking be restricted on there in the future?
We don't control the restrictions on Bellevue. It's the municipality that'll control the restrictions.
Will there be more room for vehicles to get in and out of driveways and entranceways? Because it's very tight as it is now, and if there's cars parked there, it can be dangerous to try and get out and look, and the cars are so big. So what are you going to do about entranceways?
I'm not sure I understand. We're not changing Bellevue. Bellevue would remain as is. We're not changing the geometry of it.
So Bellevue will stay the same. It'll still be no trucks, and you're saying there'll be adequate access for traffic on a road that is not designed for heavy traffic.
I'm going to defer to the traffic engineer on your traffic question.
Oh, great. Sorry, I was in the wrong category again.
Hi there.
Hello.
My question is simple. Since this plan doesn't exist in a vacuum, and you have first refusal on purchasing the parcel A in the eventual future, someone said, have you planned for stormwater management that's on parcel B to possibly be connected if parcel A is purchased?
No, we have not. We have designed the stormwater management strictly for parcel B. We have not contemplated any development on parcel A. So if parcel A were developed in the future, they would have to provide their own stormwater.
They being possibly the same folks that, if it's.
Whoever
purchase-
right now,
whoever-
AT&T is the owner of it, or whoever owns it in the future.
Okay, so how long is then the lease on the West Avenue parking lot? And is there stormwater management being planned for that, if there's ponding or anything else?
I am not aware of the lease term, and as far as the improvements on that lot, I haven't been involved in those.
Okay, thanks.
Eileen Ware, Diane Klassen,
I'll make this very quick. EDUs, equivalent dwelling units,
Correct.
which I just learned about 2 years ago. We were interviewing different people for a tenant, and we ended up deciding on Boyd's. Several of the prospective tenants wanted restaurants, breweries. There were not any EDUs to be had in the township. We have, it sounds funny, but we have 2 sinks, 2 toilets, and we could not get one more EDU. How many EDUs will you need, and how do you propose to get them?
You know, I don't have the exact number off the top of my head, but assuming one per dwelling, it's 52 plus likely one for the commercial, right? So there's probably 53 53 EDUs, right? Rough number. We're in that process of getting the EDUs. We've been allocated capacity through the connection management plan, is what it's called. So I believe it's RHM, Radnor, Haverford, Marple Sewer Authority. We've been allocated the capacity, so we're in the process right now of a planning module. It is a lengthy process, and so if you were looking at a quick lease, that was not going to happen. But we are in that process right now for getting capacity.
So the way I understand it, if you don't get your EDUs, this project won't happen.
Right, we've been allocated the capacity, so now at this point, it's really a long paperwork process.
So you're saying you have been allocated 53 EDUs?
Under the management plan, right? So there's a connection management plan they've put out saying who's requested capacity, how much capacity is going to be allocated. Now it's just a process of allocating those when capacity becomes available and going through that approval process.
the EDUs haven't been issued to Township. There's planning modules that have to be approved during the land development process by the Township and the Township Planning Commission and then DEP. None of that's happened yet. There may be, I don't know what you have, some general allocation of capacity?
We're on the management plan. We have some downstream sign-offs on the capacity, so it's a process.
It's not, and if they don't have the EDUs, they can't build the project.
Exactly.
You're correct about that.
Okay.
Michael Lahota? No. Chris Todd, he's left. Reed Taylor, Deanna Doan, Scott Gemsler. Okay. Mr. McGillivray wants a second shot at you, so.
I gotta get you what's engineered. But
First and last.
This is, I think, an important question that someone asked me to ask. So during the construction, there's a lot of old buildings, like the 201 West Lancaster Avenue, where Boyd's is now. It's a beautiful old building. And the other buildings on Bellevue Avenue, the residences, are all over 100 years old. So there is some concern about the vibration that will occur during a major construction like this, and how will that be controlled?
Yeah, so there'll be, again, there's no unusual construction with this building. If anything were built here, you're going to go through a construction process, almost similar right across the street where they built White Dog, right? Is they excavated, they compacted the parking area, they built that, building a few years back. Right? You're going back 100 years. Yeah, it is, right, but you're going back 100 years, right?
More than 30 years. I've been, for the record, I've lived in Radnor for 30 years.
You're going through a process of the construction. There will be excavation, there will be, proof rolling of areas, but there is no unusual construction anticipated as part of this project.
Will the developers do any assessment of neighboring buildings for potential damage?
I don't think we've gotten that far in the process to be able to evaluate if that's needed or not.
How about blasting? Is there any blasting that you're aware of is going to happen?
None anticipated. We haven't done full geotech, but none anticipated at this point.
But if there's blasting, there'd have to be a pre-blast survey of
Yes.
all the old homes.
Okay.
That would have to be documented, filmed. So if there is blasting after the fact, that their DEP will require that. They'd have to get.
Yeah, we have no plans to blast.
You never know till you.
But you never know,
dig it
right?
down.
So, but there is a process for that
No,
too.
There might be something down there that you have to blast out, but that's the way that would work, Mr. McGillivray.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for this witness? Yes.
All right, I have a couple of easy ones, I think. So first off, are you at or actually over the township stormwater requirement?
So we exceeded, and it's really the metric that we're looking at is you're allowed, I believe it's to count 80% of the impervious that's there, and you had to count 20% as meadow. We've actually taken a step and counted 100% as meadow, and really what that's doing is it's reducing your precedent rate, right? So when we run the calculations, we say how much water comes off right now, and if you have pavement, more water comes off. If you have meadow, a lot less water comes off. And so we've set our bar a little bit higher, or I guess lower, right? So it's a lower volume coming off. And then what we've done is designed the system to actually, reduce the rates after development to below that level.
So you're not counting the parking lot at all?
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That's a good one. Then you mentioned, or someone mentioned, an impact on township services and what that might be, and that you thought that would probably be minimal. Could you tell me what services you're talking about?
Yeah, so you have, with a building like this, you'll have private trash hauling, right? So you're not going to have any public trash hauling for it. From an emergency services standpoint, I don't see anything unusual with this building or the population of the building that would put a burden on that. You do have the building in a location where, you're going to get pedestrian foot traffic, right? Somebody moving and buying here can buy many places, right? And they're going to buy here because they can walk to Wayne, right? They can walk to downtown, they can walk to the train. And so you're going to have a lot of foot traffic out of the building versus necessarily somebody getting in their car. So I believe that all of those factors go into kind of a reduced municipal services. From the school district perspective is the fiscal impact that was mentioned. I'm not a fiscal impact expert, but there's going to be limited school children coming from this development with a positive tax benefit.
Someone will address that later? The school district that, yeah, I mean.
It's in the, it was
I
in
saw it in here, and I
analysis,
had
yeah.
questions about it. so-
Okay.
Okay, if we could just get whoever. Okay, number two's done. And then you mentioned that in the table on building height, the height is 44 feet, but your building height is actually 55 feet. What happened?
It was really the way we measured it. And so originally we looked at, there were two things, right? One is Bellevue goes up, so we were actually using both frontages on Bellevue, so it actually raised up the mean grade when you look at that, right? So we're raising up kind of our datum level. And then the appurtenances on the roof, we weren't measuring some of the appurtenances, but now rereading everything. It goes from the peak all the way down to that mean grade on Lancaster Avenue, and that's what gave that extra height. The building really didn't change, it was just the way the height was being measured.
The way you measured it, above ground, yeah. And what's the maximum allowed now?
55,
55, so you're right at the line.
yes.
Okay. And then I think last but not least, the parking. So I see you say 126 parking places. I roughly counted 105 underground.
I believe there's 109, but yes.
Yeah, I was.
In the ballpark.
Yeah, in the ballpark. And where are the rest? I only saw a few that looked like they weren't visitor parking
Yeah,
spots.
so actually using the exhibit that's up on the screen right now, A3, was that, I believe, sheet 5? Sheet 5. The striping's not shown, unfortunately, on this plan.
It's on one of them. Jim, which one was it?
Which one was it?
Yeah, we found it on one of them.
I can describe it, right? So I believe there was, let me look at the exact numbers so I don't quote you the wrong number.
So I guess what I'm concerned about is residential parking versus your commercial parking and your visitor parking.
Yep, so we have, it was, so there's 109 on the lower level. There's 6 along the entrance driveway, and that's really meant for that small commercial space. So you have 6 parking spaces in this location, which is right off of the Bellevue driveway, right to the right-hand side. And then
that's right adjacent to where the commercial space would be.
Exactly. And then there are 11 parking spaces kind of underneath where this canopy is. So as a vehicle would pull in, there's kind of a U-shaped driveway off of the main driveway, and off of that U-shaped area, there's 11 parking spaces.
And are you considering those visitor parking? I mean, if I lived in apartment 3B, would I potentially park there?
If you lived in 3B, you'd likely be parking in the lower level where you'd have parking space. And so it could be visitor parking space. You know, if you were just popping in and out, you could park there. I don't believe we've assigned any of those parking spaces.
Yeah, so just to clarify, you have 52 units, 2 spaces per unit, and then the remainder are provided for visitor and then retail.
Because you said at the beginning you had to have 126.
Correct.
So as part of the development.
I can go through the math.
Yep.
So
It's
there's
fine if it's right. I mean, I
yeah.
just wanted to
No,
make
there's
sure
there's
that they
two
were
per
somewhere.
there's two per unit, which is 104 parking spaces. There's 1 visitor space per 4 units, which is an additional 13. And then there was 9 spaces for the retail space. Which include an employee.
You just said there were 6 for the retail.
There's 6 striped spaces directly adjacent, but on the property, right? You know, just from a code
You have to
perspective.
have 9.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll go, Josh. And a visitor could park anywhere? Like, could they park under where are they supposed to be?
In all likelihood, the parking spaces in the parking garage will be designated for the individual units to be used. Much like, other condo developments in Radnor Township, you're assigned or deeded even spaces to that unit.
Okay. And then, and you said it, I just missed it, the stormwater detention basin, the cubic feet, what's the cubic feet again?
It was just under 19,000. I think it's 18,950, I think, something along those lines.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I have a couple questions specific to A6. If you could turn to page 3 of 8. In the proposed parcel B impervious coverage summary, there's an item listed as inaccessible areas dash impervious as 9,240 square feet. Can you tell me what that is?
Hold on one second. Jack, you had said A6. Are we talking about A3 sheet 6? Or are you talking about exhibit A6?
So this was stuck into A6 in mine, so I don't know if this is A3 as marked or if it's meant to be A6.
A3 sheet 3 of 8?
Yeah. Okay. I know exactly what he's talking about. So yeah, A3 sheet 3 of 8. This is the area that Jake had mentioned earlier. There's an area that AT&T, it's cordoned off, and we did not have any access to that area when we did the survey.
So this is listed, though, as being in proposed parcel B, which I understand to be the lower lot.
Correct. I think that was a carryover. No. Yes, that is an incorrect number. So that is actually in the upper table right above that parcel A. The total impervious on parcel B is actually 48,000, and that was the difference, was that 9,000 was carried on both inadvertently.
I think that resolves my question then. If you turn to page, or sheet 5 of 8, the impervious coverage summary says the total site is 48,957 in parcel B square feet of impervious, versus on page 3 of 8, it says that the total site impervious is 58,197. The delta is that inaccessible area, which should be attributed to parcel A, not B, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Which, just to clarify, it is included in A. It was a carryover.
Got it. Looking at sheet 5 of 8 in the zoning summary, you list the front yard setback as 40 feet. That's 40 feet from the center line of Lancaster Avenue to the front of the building, correct?
That is correct.
You have listed the side and rear lots as 25 and 37 feet respectively, so it's fair to say that there is no setback that is less than 25 feet, right?
Yes.
This is a corner lot, right?
Correct.
So is it fair to say that this actually has two front yard setbacks, one of 40 feet, which is Lancaster, and the other, I'm assuming, is either going to be 25 or 37 feet?
Correct. Yeah, so the north line is the 37 feet. I'm sorry, wait, let me just double check this. Yeah, the north line, I believe, was the 25 feet, and the east line was the 37 feet, I believe.
Okay, if we asked you to dimension this out for us at some point, that wouldn't be a problem?
Not a problem at all.
Okay. And it would be, just a button, it would be more than 20, or equal to 25 feet from the center line of Bellevue Avenue?
Yes.
You mentioned when answering Commissioner Myers that the height was 55 feet from the median?
Correct. It's from the, and I'm just going to pull up the definition if you give me 1 second.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how you're calculating the height.
It's the median grade is your datum line to the maximum height, right? So it's not the median height, it's the maximum height, but it's the median grade. I'm just pulling up, give me 1 second. The vertical, so let me pull up the section, is 280.53.6 definitions, building height, the vertical distance between the mean level at existing grade in front of a building or structure along a street right-of-way measured to the top edge of a flat roof, the top of a roof parapet, or to the mean level of a sloped roof.
And in this case, because it's a corner lot, the front is going to be Bellevue, is going to be the controlling line, right? Because that's the one that's sloped?
It was actually, both are sloped. It's actually Lancaster was the controlling, and Lancaster's lower, so it's worse for us to use Lancaster than it would be to use Bellevue.
That was going to be my question. Which is the more controlling one? It sounds like it's Lancaster.
Yes.
Okay. For parking requirements, I know you said that you needed 126, was it, spots?
Correct.
We don't have, I don't think, and I suspect that today we probably will not get an internal layout of the building. So when you say you need 126 spots, that's based on what you guys have decided will be the layout. That obviously could change in the future, though. Would it be fair to say that whatever the layout ultimately is, a condition of approval would have to be, it can't be something that requires more than 126 parking spots?
Yes.
Based on our conversation about the impervious coverage will still be less than 90% once the site is completed?
Correct. I believe we were at 82% roughly.
The plans, could you speak to how the plans enhance the pedestrian environment with improvements or expansions to sidewalks and crosswalks, or the inclusion of outdoor seating areas, benches, or other pedestrian amenities, if at all?
Yep. So I'll use sheet A3, Exhibit A3, sheet 5. So one of the things we did do, again, and so I'm going to go back to the trees along Lancaster Avenue. You can see them on this plan. They're the kind of circle with the dot in it. So those are the existing street canopy trees along Lancaster Avenue. We have provided the sidewalk or enhanced the sidewalk. We've actually pushed it a little bit away to be able to preserve those trees and continue that all the way out to Bellevue, and then provided an enhanced sidewalk down Bellevue. So both of our road frontages have those sidewalks. The architect can talk a little bit about the breakup of the building for the pedestrian environment, stepping back the building, creating these U-shapes to kind of have a cadence going along Lancaster.
Okay, there's an "and" in here. Crosswalks and the inclusion of outdoor seating areas, benches, or other pedestrian amenities. If you were required to include outdoor seating areas, benches, or other pedestrian amenities, is that a condition that you would be able to comply with?
Yes.
There's sufficient space, it won't be an issue.
Yeah, we can definitely provide them.
Those are all my questions.
So I'm going to hop in here. What's that? You want to go first?
No, you can go.
Just because I'm going to piggyback on what Commissioner Larkin was asking about. So there is no requirement for green space in this building? No open space requirement?
No open space requirement.
And I've heard there's going to be a green roof.
Yes.
Are there any other, whether you're required or not, but is there any other kind of green space? Like, I guess my question is also related to the stormwater management. I don't know, what's on top of that? Is that a sidewalk, or is that a green stretch?
On top of the stormwater management system will be pavement, so it's underneath the driveway.
It will be paved over, okay.
Yeah.
So no other than the green roof, no other sort of green open space?
So actually, there is the step back in the building. There's green area in there, I believe, and I think that was specifically designed to capture green.
Yep. So I'm going to pull up Exhibit A6, which is a little bit of a rendered site plan, same orientation as the other exhibits, Lancaster Avenue at the bottom of the page, Bellevue on the left-hand side. This is kind of a graphic depiction of what's seen as the green roof. And this starts to show a little bit better the kind of the U-shapes that I was referring to, and having that green area kind of go into the building and come back out of the building as you're going along Lancaster Avenue.
And the public's welcome to sit there and spend time, and residents are going to enjoy that?
I'm not sure how far public can go. Obviously, you can look into it, but it's private space up in that area.
That is open area to the public.
That is open to the public?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had. Commissioner Abel, you want to jump in?
Couple questions. And Commissioner Mulroney asked about the basin, which is sort of that's all underground, right?
Correct.
The driveway that comes in off of Bellevue, let's put up sheet 5 of 6, A3.
That's it.
Okay, so I'm coming in off Bellevue, and I can make a right, and that's sort of a turnaround.
Yes.
The roof over it. Is that the front entrance to the building?
Yes.
Or less? Okay. And then I proceed, and I make a right over top of the basin and come down to towards Lancaster Avenue, and I'm in the garage.
Correct.
The driveway coming in, is that on parcel B?
Yes, it is.
Is there a joint use with the AT&T building? Are they going to be able to use that also?
For emergency services,
Because it connects to their parking lot.
yeah, it does, and that's for their emergencies, and for their service of their building.
So the answer is yes?
Yes.
I mean, anybody that's at the AT&T building can come out on that driveway onto Bellevue.
Technically, I believe the easement does not permit like the general parking to go ingress and egress there.
But it's just an emergency access?
Yes, when they need, service something to be able to service their building, get access to their building, they have an easement.
So we're going to clarify that at some point, that, I mean, it's on parcel B, you're buying parcel B, what's AT&T going to retain in terms of access to that driveway?
We will clarify that.
We need to clarify that, so that doesn't become a general throughway. If it's
Yep.
just emergency access, I think that makes some sense. And then the parking spaces, I was a little unclear. It's 126 on site, some of it's underground, some of it's above ground, right?
Yes, there's 109 internal to the building, and 17 on the surface.
And the west parking lot will have 127.
I believe that number was correct, yes.
And that gets, what is the condition of that parking lot currently? Is it striped?
It's paved and part of it's striped, I believe.
It's striped, but
Yeah.
not to code and kind of worn.
Will that be?
It'll be brought to code.
Upgraded and?
What you see on Exhibit A17 is what is proposed. So the islands will be installed. That'll be kind of greenish space. All the spaces will be sized per code and separated all per code.
Okay, I'm done. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Anne Marie.
sorry. So when it comes to this parking lot, I am concerned about the buffer. Like, what will be the buffer for the parking lot versus resident property? I know this is not for Mr. Lambert, but.
Yep. So, I mean, that can be fleshed out during the land development process, what the township is looking for with respect to buffering between parking and residential. But we will work with staff and the board to screen it appropriately.
I have another question, because the landscape slide that you just put up with the green, if you can bring that back. It highlighted something that I thought I was looking at and couldn't see on the other renderings.
So Exhibit A6, just to.
A6,
for the
thank
record.
you. So I'm looking at the lot lines and the angle of the building, and it's not a perfect, it's not a perfect square. So when you're measuring distances, do you measure for setbacks? Where do you measure for that?
It's the minimum, right?
It's the minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, so I believe, and I don't know what I recall what I said before, I believe the 25 feet is right pinched at this corner right here.
Got it.
Along Bellevue.
Okay, that was my question.
So does the setback go into the middle of Bellevue, as that it would appear on this?
So again, the Wayne Business Overlay has some interesting language in it where it has you measure from the center of the street.
Gotcha.
The concept is the building should be close to the cartway and not set back from the cartway. I think that's part of the concept. Any more questions from the board?
I do not.
And put your face right up.
Let me reiterate some of the rules. because during the break, some residents were up here talking to the board about the application. You can't reach out to any of the commissioners or talk to them about the application. If you're a party, you know, until this is over, you can talk to the board about anything else, but not about the application. So that's important. Also, when all the testimony's done, all the sworn testimony is done, there will be an opportunity, Mr. Aiken, to give speeches and to make statements, pro or con. Not tonight. We have another night of testimony, at least one more night of testimony. There's an architect and there's a traffic engineer, so we may have 2 more nights. But when all the testimony's done and everybody's asked their questions, there will be public comment, and that's the time for speeching.
So I'm gonna clarify that. Our public comment rules are 5 minutes for residents, and then we will also include parties. So if you were a party and a business owner, then we approved. But residents of Radnor and any party to this hearing can have 5 minutes, and I do time it. You get 5 minutes to speak on your opinion and all the things that you want us to know before we close the hearing. So that's kind of the last part of the hearing. It might be the next evening that we hold a hearing. It might be 2 more nights. But at the very end, when they close their case, I will ask everybody, give me your 5 minutes, anything you want to say that you think the board should consider when we're making our decision.
Okay, is that clear? Yes? You have to come up and ask
Yeah,
the
sorry,
question.
say your name. Yeah, well, everybody else is yelling out.
Lisa Delizia, Delizia. D as in dog, Eliz like zebra, IA, Delizia.
Will we have access to the projector during the public comment, our 5 minutes?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Thanks.
Great question.
Yep. Okay.
Actually, I'm going to add a caveat to that. Yes is the answer, and anyone who might have something they want to show during their public comment, if you could try to let us know before the hearing so we can get the AV set up for you. It's just easier for us, but if you forget and you show up with an image, we're going to let you show it. No, I think she would show something.
Okay. So let's go off the record, because we need to talk about scheduling.
So John, I mean, obviously, if there's any dates in December, we would be open to them. I don't know. I'm sure the calendar's tight, but.
So we, I think, asked for nights that were open starting in January, but I don't know if we can. So we've got January 8th, 9th, 17, 29, 31, February 1, 6, 13, and 21. So a lot of it has to do with when this room is available. I know it's inconvenient to wait so long. Unfortunately, the person who has this information left for the evening, so I don't have December dates that this room would be available.
Those dates.
So these are the dates. Okay, January 8th, 9th. That's a Monday and Tuesday.
Yes.
No, the 8th's our commissioners meeting. 8th is off. 9th. 17. And 29. And 31.
And John, there's just no way to look at December dates? There's just no way to look at December dates the rest of this month? Nothing available?
You want to try to schedule something in December?
I know, but then how do we get the word out? Is everybody?
I mean, we'd have to pick it tonight and announce it on the record.
Well, that's what's going to happen anyway, right? That's why we're picking a date, so we have to announce it on the record tonight. There'll be no new advertisement.
That's right.
Yep, so,
So I just don't, we weren't given dates for December. My assumption is that administratively, we couldn't find dates between now and the end of this month. But I don't know how to fix for that. I don't have the room schedule.
I don't show a commissioners meeting on January 8th, just
Okay, thanks. So
is there anybody look at the-
January 8th is our reorg meeting. Oh, it's right. It's,
the
yeah,
second.
it's the second. So you're right. The 8th is available.
January 8th.
I mean, I've got dates going into February.
Yeah, but I think that we
For
have, is it
availability.
45 days?
Yeah, what's the rule?
Yeah, between hearings, but we agree on the record, we agree on the record.
Okay, so the 8th is back in play.
They're asking for December. It feels mean to browbeat them into waiving the 45-day requirement.
So January 8th?
we would absolutely accept the 8th if there's no availability.
January 8th. Going once, going twice. We will email all the parties. We have mostly emails. January 8th will be the next hearing.
Monday, January 8th is the next hearing at 6:30 in this room, the same as tonight. Anybody who has signed up as a party and went to Ms. Hagan and gave your contact information, you are now on the list of parties, and you will receive an outreach to remind you of the date, but this is the notice. Tonight is your official notice, January 8th. So any of your resident friends who may had to have stepped out tonight, please let them know. If they're on the list, they'll get the notice, but tonight is the official notice.
So, looking at the township calendar, like, there's nothing on the 12th and the 19th of December. They're Tuesdays. Everything else seems to have meetings scheduled.
I can't do it. I know I can't do the 12th.
What was the other one?
The 19th? No, it's a Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday.
January, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Canceled your board meeting, right, for the 18th?
Yeah, but if you
Oh,
did the
that's the other
19th,
one.
don't you need, how do you do the 2-week notice?
There's no new notice when we're on the record.
The other thing is,
I'm just throwing it out. I just quickly pulled up the calendar and was flipping through. Oh. And the 18th, it sounds like was maybe canceled.
Oh, that's true.
so there is a historic tradition of canceling the last Board of Commissioners meeting in December because we're done with the budget, and we typically don't have a lot of items, but we haven't officially made that determination yet, but that would open up the 18th as well. Could we do can everybody here do the 19th? You always know. Could you do the 18 or that you were going to be, right.
Trying, sorry.
Mr. Falcone, if we roll the dice and say the 19th,
That
are
would
you?
be terrific. I mean, I guess worst case, we could open on that night and just go to the 8th. And can we put a pin in the 8th as well? But we'll go with the 19th for now. That'd be great.
You want to keep the 8th on, too?
Yes.
Okay.
Tentatively, but we'll go
Shoot.
to the 19th.
We'll keep the 19th as the next hearing date. So scratch what I said.
Scratch January.
December,
We're going-
December 19,
December 19th.
a Tuesday night is the next hearing. We're going to save January 8th in case we have to run over for the Yeah. Okay,
Thank you very much.
of course.
We appreciate it.
Do we adjourn in any official way?
Just one
The
other.
hearings, the hearings adjourned, no?
One other thing, let's go back on the record real quick. So, at the end of the year, Commissioner Jones will be leaving the board, and Commissioner Farhi, wherever he is, will be leaving the board. And we'll have 2 new commissioners, and typically when that happens in the middle of this type of proceeding, we have an agreement on the record that the new commissioners will read the transcripts. I will provide them the transcripts, the exhibits, and they will participate in the decision.
No objection.
There'll probably be one more hearing in January, I guess. There'll be some submissions in January. Mr. Falcone's hoping he's done in December, but you never know. So, do we have that agreement, Mr. Falcone?
No objection, we agree.
No objection to the 2 new commissioners
Correct.
participating in the vote? Okay,
Yep.
great. Yes, sir.
What is it we never know, and why would this be scheduled just before Christmas?
Because it,
Christmas might not be any big deal.
It's still a business day.
businesses are still open, the township's still open. It's a night that this room is open, we believe. So this room gets booked relatively quickly. So we want to keep moving this along as much as we can.
I'm sure it does get booked relatively quickly, but what happened to January 8th? Y'all, that didn't work?
We're keeping.
January 8th is in case we have to go to 3 nights.
Yeah, we're keeping that open too.
So that's a tentative in case.
Tentative.
December 19th is the next night for this hearing, and we are adjourned.
Okay. 9:29, that's pretty good.
Could we keep these here or in some way?
You can keep them.
I don't want to keep bringing them back and forth.